Let's take a nice deep breath. This CIRF report for the period of 11/30 to December 6th, 2023. Do we have dark times ahead? Potentially, and it might just be a metaphor, but we'll show you exactly what sort of dark times to expect and how to prepare. So let's go surfing. We need some energy reports and we need some direction on how to handle it. What behaviors do we need to do? We're going to triangulate this twice. First for the energy, for the influence, and I'm going to tell you the influence is big on Venus this week. But then towards the last half, we're going to be looking at the solution. What do you do about this energy? How do you best navigate this? How do you best surf this collective energy? All right, so we have a lot of Sagittarian energy at the very beginning of our week. Powerful Sag fire, but then quickly Mercury's going to leave and go into Capricorn, and then Venus is going to pick up a lot of these hard alignments with these characters down here, all the further out planets, so deep into the subconscious, and then she's going to go into Scorpio. And this is a big deal. This represents a lot of what I Ching talks about, darkening of the light, but there's something else, which is the moon. Moon's in the last quarter phase, which is very darkening of the light. It's not the epitome of the dark. The new moon is where the darkest of the dark comes in that metaphor, in that 30 to 29 day cycle. But right now it's that shift towards receding back and introspection and retrospection and learning and yin and taking it easy, rejuvenating your energy. That's this week. And that too could represent darkening of the light. Now, what's interesting in the I Ching is that there were no change lines. And, we've seen plenty of darkening of the light in our I Ching readings, but we've never had it to where it becomes both the influence and later on in our solution triangulation. And so that's super interesting. We have no change lines, and we'll go through. That's very significant because an unchanging hexagram I Ching 36 has a different kind of solution, obviously. And so we'll look at that. And I think you'll like that solution. I do. Dreambot is sort of weird. I've got questions there. It's like the Earth is in trouble. Terra firma is broken. The Earth, is it just the globe, the Earth, or is it just the continent or the land part? I don't know, but that is starting to turn a little negative. Remember, we had a lot of positive kind of words in the last few weeks on the Dreambot. Not that it's turned terribly negative. And these memes, like Earth is one and trouble is the other, is not real strong, but it's really the only memes there. So you put them together. I have the Dreambot kind of out here separate because it's not really darkening of the light. If you really want to be technical, maybe trouble is sort of darkening of the light, but I think that's too much. So I kept Dreambot circle. I kept that out of our Gantt chart. And what we're looking at is a very low congruency score. I mean, you're welcome to put that, over the trouble or over the darkening of the light with the I Ching, but I left it off. I don't know if it's all that important. If you look at whatever overlap there is sort of this, like, I don't know what to expect. Just how about some caution ahead? That's the influence for this week. That's the only overlap, and it's a low congruency score. It has a lot of metaphor here that can explain this darkening of the light. So I'm not going to get all bent out of shape that, something really bad happens. We don't know. But the energy is, hey, let's take some caution ahead. But that's not the solution. You got to hang around for the solution because it's far different. All right, here we go. Our winner this week goes out to Sacred Dreamer. Shout out to the best comment. And for shouting out my little shadow surfer guy. I thought that was clever too, but we want accuracy. That's the whole point of these readings. So hopefully that's intact. Now, what we're looking at is our overview is in the eclipse cycle. We're in between a full moon and a new moon. New moon next is December 12th with Sagittarius. So we're sandwiched in between. So, typically there's not these big dominant energies, but this week there is, because we're looking at the biggest dominant energy. The lead role this week is Venus. So darkness befalls Venus, and we'll be more specific about what that means. But it goes on, hyperdrive right on Monday, and that's when Venus goes into Scorpio. But first, before we get into too much astrology, I do want to cover the DreamBot. And we have, our word food. Now that we've gotten past Thanksgiving, it's dropped still in the DreamBot run, but a whole new array of words. In fact, we've got some linguistic sets that I thought were interesting. Number one, currently setting break happening. It's kind of got that flair of, hey, it's happening, if you know what I mean. And then two is country consciousness losing. That's scary in and of itself as an Aquarian. Okay, so other words we have are like playground, country, plants, and reflect surface. So I don't know, has a terra or land, or maybe not a lot of earth. You can see there's not a lot of red arrows, but that's the dominant meme. And then you've got the blue arrows. That's just sort of negative, where we're losing and broken and just kind of bad stuff. Again, not real dominant, not a whole lot of arrows, but more than any other memes that might be pulled out of here. Top word, selection. Selection playground. I almost put that as in linguistics. I don't like to do linguistics with only two words, because we could have every pair looks like linguistic sets, and I'm not really into that. But selection playground sort of has that law of one feel to it, where you are called harvest to the next density. I don't know. That's just me. All right. Now, let's get into the overview. We're obviously to the right here at the very end of November, so let's move into December. We have, to start off this week, we have quite a bit going on, including in our retro layout, we have Neptune going direct, and this will probably be the last time I talk about it. It's right at the end of our surf week, next Wednesday, so this shifts dreams and fantasy, and kind of writes the subconscious, maybe perhaps less nightmares, maybe less recurring nightmares, recurring dreams, more new and fresh spiritual material. How about that? And then mid-December, we're looking at Mercury going into retrograde, and that is, didn't put it down, somewhere around 13th. I didn't look at that in detail, and we still have Jupiter and Uranus in retrograde all month. And then the new moon in Sag is on December 12th, and then we have the Cancer full moon on December 26th, the day after Christmas. All right. Take another deep breath here. Maybe a little sip of tea. While I introduce our first day, Thursday the 30th, I'm going to take this little jacket off. Getting kind of warm in here. And speaking of warm, on the 30th, we have already the hint of trouble brewing for Venus. and it just really does get more intense all week. It starts with our look at all these alignments on Venus. So first you have the square over to Moon, and this will later on in the day create a T-square, a full up T-square with Pluto and Venus and Moon. And that's just hard. That's puts a high focus on all things Venus. By the way, she's over the South Node. So this brings in a lot of the past material, a lot of the karmic effects of relationship and maybe finance. Oof, we bring in finance in this equation. Wow. Karma, like in staving off depressions and in doing so, making the inevitable depression even worse. That's kind of this energy. You already see a spike of gold right now, dabbling with that all-time high again. We're within points of that at the time of this recording. And this is the 29th of November. And by the way, this is talking about the 30th. Check this out. I'm not into this all fear porn, but there's this NASA and weather experts have alerted that a solar storm can hit on Earth on November 30th, causing a blackout of radio. Wow, that's crazy, because we're talking about the energy of this going dark, and the I Ching says darkening of the light. That's more than just metaphoric. I mean, we already have metaphor. We have the last quarter moon. We have all this Scorpio and Venus stuff going on, but let's continue. We have Venus square over to Pluto, and that's only 3-degree orb, so that's going to get nice and tight here in the next couple of days, and that's before Venus goes into her detriment in Scorpio. Meanwhile, we have Venus trine Saturn. Now, this is the loosest one, and this will take the longest to perfect, but it will perfect this week. And I believe that's after Venus goes into Scorpio, but that's a trine, so that brings in at least some helpfulness of Saturn, maybe some discipline, some guidance, some cold guidance, some kind of fatherly or, I don't know, leadership or suggestions or coach. How about that? About Bob Knight sort of a coach is this Saturn trine Venus. So he helps her go through the quagmire of the Scorpio abyss that she just can't figure out how to not jump into that tempting waters of Scorpio. Meanwhile, we also have the archetype of Mars combust, Mars and Sun together, the warrior twins, and bringing out a lot of the Sagittarian fire, but it's short-lived. It's a waning conjunction. And Sagittarian emphasis is going to start waning once Mercury leaves, and that's actually tomorrow on December 1st. We have a T-square coming up, like I mentioned, with Venus being at the focal point of that. So it's rough. It's already a rough start for Venus. Let's see what happens next. Now, the other kind of hidden side to this, and I don't think I even mentioned that. Let me take a pause before we hit the first, and let's scroll back up to our overview. I don't think I talked about this green line that sort of just quietly is underneath the heaviness and the darkness of Venus is Mercury. And Mercury going into Capricorn takes him out of detriment and into more practical and pragmatic, but like leadership mindsets, but clear and whole mind, because it's at the start of the week is Mercury trine Jupiter. And by the end of the week, it's very, very tight. So it's a whole mind thing. We got the lower mind with Mercury with a nice synergistic trine over to Jupiter, bringing in the wise mind, and you get all of that together. But it's superseded energetically by this whole Venus thing and darkness. But at least we have clear mind. We have clarifying, pragmatic and practical mind. So that's the bright spot. Now, while all that's happening, imagine this. So Mercury goes into Capricorn at 8:31 a.m. Central Time. But meanwhile, all day, the moon is approaching a last quarter moon, not quite there, but look at all those aspects. So we've got a T-square developing, you've got an opposition, you got two trines, two adjustments. So emotions are just all over the place. They're going to be very distracting. It is energizing this manner because moon is home in Cancer on, well, the Thursday and Friday. And so at least we have that, but it's higher energy, but then sort of displaced all over the place with pressure points, with easy points, like with your dreams, a lot more dreams. I've noticed a lot more REM stage recently, and this will go even more. And then the Mercury going into Capricorn, the pragmatic thinking like a boss, because Capricorn is one of our leaders in the zodiac. A very ambitious mind. It's achievement oriented. It's very practical. And it's just starting this trine over to Jupiter. 7 degrees orb right now. And that will get stronger and very beneficial for us. We can be very logical and see things as they are, right? So we don't have to judge our experiences as good or bad. We can just see it as it is and then be able to do something about it. Okay. So yeah, we have the wise mind as Mercury trine Jupiter. That just gets stronger. That's a, 5 degree orb now. So it's happening fast, but Venus is still grappling with the past. And now the next strongest is, so we had the Neptune aspect is tightroping with fantasy and tricks of Neptune and not knowing what's real and what's not. But we also have the strengthening square over to Pluto. So we have the past, Venus kind of grappling with past and karma and those bigger concepts, but past oriented, and then converting those into a pressure to control. These are this square here with Venus and Pluto is pressurizing, and it's about control. So we're going to be, unfortunately, kind of on the one hand, we want peace, and we want it so bad that you're going to control the person to get your peace, which just creates a power struggle. All right. Then on Sunday the 3rd, this is where Venus, which I just talked about, Venus and Pluto, that whole dynamic power struggle, the probability that you're going to be entering into a power struggle with your loved ones is much higher on Sunday the 3rd. So maybe just keep your distance and focus on just doing your own thing, focus on free will, maybe consciously accepting other people's free will might be a way to stave off power struggles. Anyway, that goes exact at 7:29 a.m. Central Standard Time on the 3rd. Now, when we have all this trouble on Venus and relationship and finance, now Venus takes all that with her and jumps into the abyss with Scorpio. Now, in Scorpio, Venus is actually in detriment, so she's weakened. Now, in her weakened, she is more tempted, more seductive, and she jumps into these dark, mysterious, and maybe potentially dangerous waters of Scorpio. And if you notice this picture, here's our image for starting on Monday the 4th, as our relationships or our desire for harmony, diplomacy, all these things really sort of take a back seat or feel really weak. And if you combine the power struggle with the weakness of harmony or diplomacy, you can see why things might feel a little dark. So notice these little embers or these little lights. This is the the Saturn influence, the trine. So we have a nice open channel to Saturn. So what that means is easy time getting disciplined or getting guided, and not easy guide, not like holding hands. It's going to feel alone, but you'll have these little hidden indicators, these tiny little embers that guide your way through these very scary times. Starting on Monday the 4th, Scorpio's abyss. Meanwhile, at night on the Monday the 4th, we also have the last quarter moon. And, this is not a real big negative thing, but it's the time where we do shift. We shift into, this is last call for your Scorpio goals. This is, if, whatever is remaining, we have a little bit more time to go, but really after the last quarter moon, it's full up rejuvenation, relax, gaining energy instead of expending energy. It's not a perfect thing. We just don't want to be really starting new things, big projects. You don't want to be starting those after the last quarter moon and Monday the 4th at night. And we also have in the backdrop, this is a rarity this week, but you have 5 mutable signs and 5 earth signs. And so on that backdrop is a very Virgo kind of a feel to it, which gives you energetically the ability to at least adapt. So even though Venus now is dropping into the scary abyss and potentially into the darkness, we have the ability to think practically and chink and jive with mutable signs helping us along the way. Oh, and a grand earth trine. So, that's probably where this earth and mutable signs come from, but that can be grounding as well. So at least you'll feel if it's scary and alone and feels dangerous and irresistible, and you're in the Scorpio abyss, or your relationship is there, at least you'll feel grounded and can think practically. Thursday the 5th, we now have Venus and Saturn in an exact situation. So it's easy to feel scarcity in all things Venus, who is in detriment and weakened. So we already have weakened ability to feel like we can mediate with other people and harmonize, but it becomes even more scarce and more challenging. So that's neat. But we still feel a little bit Virgo-esque, so we can adapt to it. So at least we have that. And we have the darkening of the light with the waning crescent moon. Then on Wednesday the 6th, this is the strongest alignment. We go back up to that red and green diagram from before. This is the main energy of a real positive thing for thinking and mind. And that should almost touch, so let's go back up to our chart. So the only error on this chart that I can see is by the time this week ends on Wednesday, these lines should probably be touching. And by that way, I don't mean that the green should be higher. I mean the red should be declining earlier to where it kind of crests over and the Mercury trine Jupiter becomes more dominant. So, all right, here we go. Here's the I Ching. We have, that's the solution. We have the influence from 11:30 to 12:06, 2023, darkening of the light, which says, imagine fresh darkness, the period just after sunset or after a fire has gone out. There is still much activity over from the light of day, and the movements in the outer world are at their most dangerous. Even the smallest sound, the faintest glow of light, can attract unwanted attention now. Many dangerous uncertainties exist. And now with the Scorpio on Venus, especially when you think about the Venus as wanting to experience pleasure, wanting to feel excited and pleasant, can take more risks and will take more risks if they're not very aware that they're wanting that. So that's even more dangerous, right? So now let's go to our solution slide. Now I got to change this. Here we go. You can barely see the picture that I have depicted here because it's very darkness. But you have the Saturn trines helping you along the way. All right. So you got myopia when you're down here in this Venus in Scorpio sort of archetype and energy. It's dark down there. You got myopia, can't see very far, but you just go light to light because we have the trine over to Saturn. All right, let's do this. The strongest influence all week will be generated from the hard aspects on Venus, especially starting Monday when she falls into Scorpio's dark and dangerous abyss with very tight alignments. That's Pluto, Saturn, and in conjunct to Neptune and an opposition to Jupiter, and then initially that T-square. That's a lot on Venus. This will be a very challenging and potentially heavy period for relationships, diplomacy, trying to stay in balance, wanting to experience pleasure and love, etc. The bright spot in the chart is Mercury entering Capricorn with a trine to Jupiter. Pragmatic thinking, achievement-minded, synchronistic thoughts, just thinking like a boss. Hooah. All right, now we go back and transition to the solution. And remember, no change lines, so we also have for our solution hexagram 36. But unchanging says the greatest gift you can give yourself is recognize your inner light that shines regardless of the weather outside. Sometimes you hide your light in somebody else's pocket. Sometimes you hide it in the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You hide it in the valley and bury it with moss so nobody discovers you are hiding. The obscurity of your brightness is not serving anyone because you have misplaced the reason for your existence. You are not a victim of life, is eagerly awaiting your sunrise. If you don't let the real you shine, how can life celebrate your goodness? Only you know what it means to be fearlessly yourself, but you have placed the center of the compass elsewhere. So it's time, what is suggesting it's time to rein that back in and just be your authentic self. There is no longer any reason to hide. Brightness, hiding, unchanging, suggests that whatever is unfolding is allowing you to tap your inner light. The events this week will ask you and beg you to tap into your deepest aspects, which can be very dark and scary and very Scorpio. So what we have, great segue, we have Venus with all those aspects on Venus. She is the lead role this week, and the biggest event for her going into Scorpio at 12:50 p.m. on Monday, December 4th, right in the middle of Rave hexagram 50. And we have Virgo, Sidereal Virgo. All right, starting with the cauldron, hexagram 50 of the Rave says the value of historical continuity whose traditional values serve and enrich the present and the future. That's not so much important as the line. Line 4 is about corruption. Now this takes us full circle back. Remember what new moon we started with, roughly about 3 weeks ago, was Scorpio. And so this completes is a perfect, absolutely perfect activity and concentration point from the rave about our Scorpio kind of buttoning up things with the last quarter moon. So here it is: corruption, the lack of enriching values, the malefic gift of turning inferior values into material success. Given the difficult position Saturn's exaltation is, that its actions are limited to selfishness and unsavoriness rather than criminality. All right, that's all blah, blah, blah. Here it is: the capacity to maintain one's strength despite inferior values. What the concentration is, according to the rave, is corruption, which goes right into our Scorpio goals for this month at the last quarter moon. It doesn't mean you have to do anything. This is a very last quarter and waning crescent activity for us to do. And so here we go. Here's our summary. Here we are. All right, let me explain these photographs. Remember, the influence from I Ching 36 unchanged was darkening of the light, but the solution is let your light shine, right? It's the reverse. So find it within, go within, jump into the Scorpio abyss, and bring out your true nature. Be authentic. All right. And then this picture is very Venus. So she's trying to maintain balance, but corruption. She's kind of got one eye on the money and easily tempted. It's the Venus in Scorpio. And so the solution is to watch yourself and watch others being corrupt, or maybe the desire for corruption or to using corruption. You can look at this two ways from a solution aspect. Number one, like technically you can look at this as the solution triangulation as a way that you can bend some rules this week and still get away with it. I think it would be better to use it as an introspective tool, not to go get stuff, although you can. I think it'd be much better to sit quietly with yourself as the last quarter moon and reflecting on the past 3 weeks, but reflecting even beyond that, because Venus is over the South Node. So you have access to all the past, and you can see corruption throughout the collective, and you can pick which corruption gets you the most riled up. Like looking at others, this is called projection. So what kind of corruption that other people do that really riles you up? And if you go deep into your soul and resolve that, because this is called projection, when you can find it in someone else, it indicates that you've got a problem with this very thing. You say, no, I'm not corrupt. It's not about if you are or aren't. We all have the capacity for corruption. And so this week, we really want to, according to this picture here, really look honestly at ourselves. And this allows us to shine our light brighter and more authentic. All right. So getting more real. Then Sidereal Virgo is really paying attention to the details. That'll come into things. And then the moon phase is the last quarter. So let's read it. We are afforded a very delicate and poignant triangulation as the darkness metaphorically befalls the collective. First step is to simplify. With the last quarter moon, it's closing time on your lunar phase goals, your Scorpio goals. It's time to start receding, plan for rejuvenation, simplicity, and retrospection. Sidereal Virgo encourages us to maintain self-care and attention to the smaller details. And since overlapped with I Ching 36, we will best see outcomes by being genuine and purely authentic this week. Make sure, but don't keep your brilliance hidden underneath the proverbial bushel basket. Shine your pure soul's expression. Meanwhile, the moon, Virgo, and Rave overlap. So that'd be moon, Rave, and Virgo. That overlap has us inspecting corruption within ourselves. So according to the Rave, you want to look, this only happens with our inferior values. The values are still there, but weaker than our more dominant ones. And so we have to go into our shadow, which is a very Scorpio sort of a activity, which goes back to our whole lunar phase. So look for the weaker values as compared to your dominant ones. What type of corruption triggers you the quickest? So you are looking outside of yourself, looking at others, and seeing whether or not you're getting triggered by their corruption. And if you are, then that indicates there's a projection happening within you. And you're like, and you have to do the conscious override, because you know, no. Projection is you don't know that you're taking the stuff that you don't like within yourself and identifying it in others. It takes one to know one. And so once you see it, once you complain about another person especially with bitterness, sarcasm, cynicism, that's a huge indicator that you're in the dynamic of projection. You're projecting corruption so that you don't have to feel so bad about the capability that you have to be corrupt. All right. So when you feel triggered by other people's corruption, do the harder work of going within self and resolving that. Seeing that you have the capacity for it, recognizing that you can, but do I want to? And that, according to, I think Jordan Peterson was the one who kind of coined this idea where you have these tools, or you have this money, you have this, what it looks like power, but you don't use. The real power is not using the tool that you have for inflicting harm or carrying out something. So like having a lot of money but not spending it is a form of power. Having a gun and not shooting another human, that's real power, according to him. That's sort of the same concept. All right, and now let's go into the runes. All right. So I start with the saying, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And that's the darkness. I want to be okay in the dark. I want to be safe. I want to feel and confirm that I'm going to be okay. And if the darkness does befall, remember this. All right, and then my runes, I want to continue to be harmonizing. I want to make sure that my access to the strong Venus within me is maximized, even though she has all these hard aspects and diving into Scorpio. And so I want the gay boo. I want that to remind me to really continue to focus on it. Things along these lines might be harder, but it reminds me to really pay attention to it and not let these go into decay. And then I want to stay strong with Tiwaz, but I also think this has to do with corruption. I want Tiwaz. I want to be able to be powerful and know that I am successful if I hit dark times. Okay. So that's why I'm using Tiwaz. You guys can use whatever runes you'd like. I'm not an expert in how runes work and their history, but I'm fascinated with it and I'm using this, and I think it really does help. If nothing else, it just reminds me that this is the solution for the week, is being strong and finding corruption, especially within myself, strong enough and confident and courageous enough to be my true self and shine my own light, my true light. and Gabu, which is, hey, it's going to be hard to be in balance or feel in balance this week. So let's really pay attention to it. And that's why I want Gabu. In addition to the whole Libra eclipse cycle, I'm just going to probably keep that up as a general rule. But you're free to do whatever you want to, all right? There's your solution, everybody. And, wow, got a lot here, a lot to unpack. But we did that. So come back to this solution slide frequently, because I think this is going to be one of those more challenging weeks. But that's just me. All right. You ready, everybody? Let's do this. Namaste. Love and light to all of you. We'll see you again next week. Bye.